Hi everyone. Can you confirm that you can hear me?
We can
Hello,
hear
I'm
you.
waiting. Okay, okay, that's good. All right. So in our last class, we talked about we've been looking at data curation, right? The process of data curation and what it entails, some of the steps that are typically involved in data curation, and some of the sources, data sources that we have for data curation. So let me just quickly share my screen. So like I said, we looked at some of the steps that are typically involved in data curation. We talked about data collection, and we said that this includes like web scraping, retrieving data from APIs, from sensors, surveys, and one very important one as well is databases, right? Because sometimes web scraping and APIs work when perhaps you want to work with external data. But what about if you're working with internal data, right? That is related to the organization that you're working with. Let's say the organization you're working with has um, a storage system, right? And you need to work with the data from that storage system to answer questions concerning the business. Of course, there are various forms of storage systems, and databases are one of them, right? So we have data warehouses, we have data lakes, but one of the most popular ones, usually for businesses starting out, would be databases, right? So, and then another step typically involved is data cleaning. So, can also call this data validation because you need to validate your data, identify and correct errors as well as inconsistencies within your data organization, right? So structuring the data into a logical and manageable format and all that. We talked about this in like our very first session. So for today's class, we're going to be picking up from where we stopped with our APIs, and then we're also going to take a look at working with databases. If you have it, I just need to quickly share. All right, so we looked at the movie database, right? That is available for public use. It's a public and free API. I remember we said that some APIs can be protected. Some APIs require that you have an API key, which sometimes means that you pay to use some of those APIs, right? So an example would be some of the popular social networks, Reddit, Twitter, right? You would pay to use the APIs that they offer. So some of them are not free. But then we decided to work with this one that is free just to get a sense of what it is like to work with APIs. And we all we did, right? Defined our headers and our authorization, included our API key in our headers. And then we defined this function to get the data. We included some parameters to specify what we wanted. And then we processed this for about 5 pages. So just run this again, like, okay. And then we had our results. And so I just want to take us through the next step of data curation, which is typically data validation, right? This is something that we have done across all the other stages, but it bears repeating that whenever you are working with data, it cannot be skipped. It should not be skipped. This is to show you just how important it is that you validate the data that you're working with. So it is very important that you, doesn't matter, especially because it's coming from an external source, right? So you don't know what systems are in place. You don't know what bugs are in place, right? That might not allow the result you're expecting to be what you get. So there's that possibility, right? That there might be bugs which mean that, okay, so they define one thing, but somehow the data that you get, that's not what you see at the end of the day. So that's why it's very important that you validate the data that you're working with. Otherwise, um, poor or wrong data would lead to wrong analysis. Okay. So we're just going to quickly see what data validation in this case would look like. We have about 180 results here. So I'm just going to quickly get this in a data frame, right? So okay, so we see our data in this form. And now, of course, validation depends on your end goal, right? So it really depends on our end goal. We have a couple of, we can go ahead and take a look at each of the rows, each of the columns of this data frame to understand very quickly what it comprises of. Okay, so we see backdrop path has about 175 non-null values. So we have about 5 nulls in there. So let's also take a look. Another thing that you need to know is that sometimes null values can be misrepresented, okay? So in a case, you still want to look into your data set to see if there are null values that were not captured, okay? Because yes, pandas would do its best to interpret certain values as null values. But where, let's say, we have a data set where we have things like missing or not available, written out in full, those are those are clear indications that that data is not available, and pandas will not interpret that as a null value. That's on you, okay? So what we need to do in this case, one of the ways that we implement data validation is by taking a look at each of our columns, right? And ensuring that we got what we were expecting. And one way we can do that is just do a value count, or the unique method that we've always been using. And so here we see that, okay, everything is looking good. We can do the same. We can just automate this process. Okay, so we can already see that backdrop path is not going to be. So let's do something like this. Um, or better still, let's just walk through it, each of them. There's no need to be in a rush. So let's walk through each of them. So backdrop path is not going to be unique, right? Because I mean, different parts. I believe these are like the images for the movies, right? So definitely not going to be the same. So, but let's look at the join IDs and see what we have. So we see a list of this. We see that these are lists. And then one thing that we can do is we'll come back to this. We'll try to understand, okay, um, what are the most common IDs that we have there. And we can, like I said, this is a process, this is a back and forth process. You go back to the API documentation, and then we'll try to figure out, okay, these are join IDs, right? So like, what do these IDs represent and all of that. So, but let's look at the rest of the columns that we have and just get a sense of everything. So this is to be expected, right? This to be expected though. We have a couple of values that we have this one that is more than, we expect the ID to be unique, right? But we have this as two. We have two counts of one ID occurring. So one thing we can do, which leads us to trying to check our data set. So do we have duplicates? Let's see. Okay. So I know that we can call this on the, let's see. Let's call this on January on a particular. Yeah, but I'm just going to quickly go to the documentation. I know that we can call this on a series, but I think I need what we can use for the data frame as a whole. Okay, so yeah, this is coming from the column that we have that is a list. So one thing we can do is flatten this out anyway, um, or basically turn this into a string that we can work with for now, right? That's one thing that we can do. And then when we want to manipulate it, when we want to get the most out of it, right, we can then go ahead and split that string. That's something that we can do. Let's try that out. Okay, we can define this quickly as a function, and then let's see, we'll apply that to the whole of that series. Let's see, something I'm missing here. Sequence item expected string instance integer found. Okay, so we can first of all do a conversion, I guess. So let's first do that. Uh, okay. So next thing we're going to do, what I've done here is a simple function to convert this to a string of the various join IDs, right? That we want to work with. So I'm just going to apply that, and let's create a whole new function. Yeah, a whole new column rather. So what I'm doing next is I'm simply dropping this column, dropping this, so that we can go ahead and run our duplicates check. Okay. So I mean, when we want to check for duplicates, like from the data frame points, we also have the option of um, specifying a subset, like a set of columns that we want to do check for our duplicates in, right? But I want us to be able to check across all of the columns. So that's why I'm doing this. So I'll just specify that I want to drop this, specify the axis to which it belongs, and then we'll be good. Okay, so we should be able to run this now. So we should be able to see that, oh, we have two duplicates here, right? So we have this, we should take a look at our ID again, okay, and just confirm that it is indeed what we are working with. So yeah, it is actually. So that makes sense. So we have duplicates in our data set. So what we can do is just drop the duplicates. This is the importance of doing the validation. I mean, it's an API you're calling from. Like I said, external source, you don't know what to expect. This is why this is important, okay? I know that we have gone through some of the ways that you can validate and clean your data, but just to emphasize how important it is that you do this like in every step, that in every process you're working with, I had to bring this back for the data that we scraped. All right, so we'll just simply drop the data and then we can decide to continue the checks for the rest of the columns. So we don't need this anymore. What we can do is just drop duplicates. Yeah, drop duplicates. Let's see. Before dropping duplicates, we have so we should be expecting about 178, right? So in place, all right, so we will continue with our data check. We look at the original language and try to figure out, just copy what we have before. So we see we have about 131 for English and for this other language as well as for the rest of them. At this point, right, you can decide what you want to do. You want to stick with only movies that are in English. You can decide to drop the rest. And let's do that. Let's just stick with what we have. Let's stick with what's only in English, right? And let's just drop the rest. So to do that, we'll just, of course, you know what to do. You specify the column value, and then you have a bunch of Boolean values. You have your series as a bunch of Boolean values, whether truth or false, and then you select based on that, select what you want to drop. So you can either select what you want to drop or select what you want to keep. So whatever approach works, let's just do a keeping type of thing. So let's just say original language should be equals to this. and then we get to keep that. So we run this. Okay. So I think you get the gist of it, right? We keep doing this for the rest of the columns, and then until we see that, okay, our data is in a good shape, right? And that's one of the ways that we validate the values. It's very important to look through the values in each column and be sure that what you're working with, depending on your end goal, right? So we have not really defined an end goal for this data that we're working with. The goal was to demonstrate how we can use it. The goal was just to demonstrate how we can gets data using APIs, right? So another column that you want to look out for would be your dates, right? So you want to see how the pandas define our dates, release dates, takes it as an object. You might want to convert that to a I think it has a to date time. Yeah, to date time, I think. So we specify, okay, I'll just quickly, it's either to date time or as type. I want to read the documentation and pick the correct one. Just give me a minute. Okay, so so it's not a function on that, I'm more of this. So with this, so the difference is, I hope you've seen my error was calling it as a method on the pandas data frame. That's not what it is. It's a method that is a top level function that can be accessed from pandas itself. So you just call that and then specify the column that you want to specify. So moving on, we specify we want to see it as a datetime object so that we can manipulate it. And then pandas has been able to convert it without us specifying the format we want it converted in, which means that, okay, things conform, everything is in like is in a standard format, so to say, right? But sometimes you might need to specify the formats that you want to work with. Sometimes is a lot better to, if working with an external source, it makes more sense to specify the format you want to work with. Okay. So those are some of the things that you need to do regardless of the source you're working with. So we'll stop here as far as data validation is concerned. And I just took a look at the project you submitted, and I didn't see some of these things done, right? Which which is interesting because I said regardless of the data source, you need to do these things. You need to validate the data. It is important. It is very, very important. So the second thing I said we're going to be working with doing today is we're going to be looking at another data source that is very common, which is databases, right? So I don't think you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
No, we can't see your screen. It just came up.
You can see it now, Nabi.
Yes.
Okay. So there are a couple of databases, right, that we get to work with. There's SQLite, there's MySQL, there's SQL Server, there's Postgres, right, which are very common relational databases that we get to work with. There are some others that are non-relational databases, right? No SQL databases, but that is beyond the scope of this program for your track. So we'll focus on this, which is here you have, here's Postgres documentation. Of course, the first thing I'll do is bring you to the documentation. This is where just search Postgres SQL brings you to the documentation. If you want, you go ahead and download this, or go ahead and check a tutorial online on how to, depending on your operating system, of course. So this provides you with a way that you can download this and set it up. But the point is, sometimes within an internal organization, right? Not sometimes, a lot of times within internal organizations, when you're working as a data analyst within an organization, you're going to be working with that organization's database, right? And you need to know how to interact with databases. So you need to know how to select data from databases. You need to know how to write queries so that you can pull data from the various data from the database and from the tables, the various tables that you're going to be working with within the database. So I'll just be introducing you to um I'll introduce you to a very quick, yes, okay. So we'll take a quick look at a database that I have set up locally that we can work with. So if you want to set this up yourself, I'll direct you to, this is just a quick database that I have set up for the purpose of practicing in this class, just so that we can run a few queries, and then I'll give you some resources that you should practice with, some resources that you can use to strengthen your SQL knowledge, because it's very important. Knowing Python is great, but then you also need to know SQL as a data analyst. It is very, very important. So we're just going to take a quick look. Now, we've talked about Postgres, right? But another thing that you need to know is that Postgres is like the database, right? You need a way to interact with the database. And so there are a couple of um, client softwares that you can use. You have PSQL, which comes together with Postgres. You have pgadmin, which is like, it separates like tool itself, but allows us to interact with Postgres server. So PSQL is more like a command line tool, which you will see, if you see in this one that I opened here, there's no fancy tool. But pgadmin, on the other hand, I mean, let's just go there. pgadmin, on the other hand, allows you to interact from your browser as a web app on your sorry, yeah, as a web app, right? So from the browser, you set it up locally, and then it gives you like a point like you can use on your browser, right? And you can also set it up like on your desktop, so like as a desktop app, right? So yeah, this is what I'm talking about, pgadmin. You come here, you set it up locally. But if you just want to get started with SQL, I would I would not recommend trying to set it up because that can get frustrating. You can practice this. There are a couple of websites online that host a database, so you can practice SQL with that. But I mean, if you want to go the extra mile and set this up, then follow the documentation here. You download, you might run into some errors. You follow some resources online as well. So like I said, this has more of a friendly interface, takes some getting used to. Unfortunately, I couldn't set that. I don't have it set up now, and it's going to take a bit of time. Perhaps in the next class, I would set it up so you can see what it looks like. So yes, this has a more friendly interface and allows you to, it's just more friendly compared to PSQL. For people that are scared of command line tools and prefer to see a bit of graphics and all that, yeah, so this might be preferable to you. But PSQL is lightweight, and you don't need much else apart from having Postgres server installed on your system. So that's why I tend to prefer it. So first step I'm just going to do is try to connect to, so I'll connect first, and then I'll explain what is happening, and then we'll run a few queries. Let me just get connected to the database. We'll run a few queries, and I'll explain what's happening and point you to some resources so that you can learn some more. Okay, so okay, so what I have done is basically connecting to, this is me connecting to the database, right? So these are just flags to specify the rest, all the commands. So like I said, the database is running locally. So that's why I'm using localhost. The port that it is running on is 5432 and all of this. Let's not go into this right now. But I'm connected into the data. Now I can interact with the database, right? And so if I want to get a sense here, this is PSQL has its own set of commands that it allows you to use and get a sense of um, the tables you're dealing with within your database. Same with pgadmin. Pgadmin also allows you to see, right? So you can as well just get a list of the tables within your database. just by viewing, like clicking on some button and seeing that. So right now, I want us to get a sense of how many. So I have the following tables, right? I have bookings, I have facilities, and I have members. Okay, so now let's say I want to get a sense of how many rows are within these data sets, right? So that's where the SQL command comes in. And so this is, if you're working within an organization, you'll be given access to a database, and you will need to run queries. So from this point, let's go back to our, okay, let's go back to what we worked with initially. So let's say we did this, we completed our cleaning on this, and we are satisfied with what we have. And it's meant to be a continuous process, right? Where after cleaning, we want to be getting data from the movies API consistently. We'll need to store it in some place other than a file. And that's where databases come, okay? So we need a persistent storage. Not like files are bad, but files can be corrupted. It's just a number of things that make files like not to be the best file storage system that you want to use, right? So databases can be, a number of people can connect to databases. So it can be used by several processes as well, unlike files that you need to kind of like share between. So if I mean, just like we do you ask me, oh, Ma, please, can we get the data sets that we're working? It has to be shared across and all of that. But once a database is set up on some it's set up on some external like server, right, that everyone can access, right? So here I have this set up locally. But once a database is set up such that members within an organization can access it, there will be no need for all that. Oh, please, can you share the data with me? You have access to the data. You'll be granted access to the data and all that. So I say all that to, okay, I need to go back to this. Okay, so this, the data that I have here is basically this is how it was inserted. All right, it's just data about bookings that clients made to a facility. So it's just a random data set about bookings that clients made to a facility. So, and then we have another table. I'll just run through the tables that are within this data. We have bookings that clients made. Then we have the facilities. So we have a table dedicated to talking about the facilities. And then we have people that are registered as members within like that organization. So let's just imagine that this is an organization that offers booking services, right? So it stores data on the bookings that a client is making. It stores data on what facilities clients are booking into. And then it also stores data on like members that are sort of like registered with the organization, right? So that's what this is about. So now there are a couple of SQL commands that you need to know to be able to interact with databases. And one of it, like I said, is the select statement, right? So you want to, if you're looking at retrieving data, you have the select statement, you have this asterisk, which signifies that I want all the columns, and then you specify from as well as the table that you want the columns to come from. Okay. And then we can also do, we can also specify that we want to select specific columns within a particular table. Okay. So we know that, okay, these are the columns within this table, book ID, face ID, and all of that. And let's say we just want the booking ID, right? So we can specify that here. Okay. So now another thing that I want to quickly talk about before I point us to resources that would serve us is we can decide to do table joins. So I talked about how important it is, right, to complement your data. So you don't just work with one data source. You complement. I didn't see anybody do that in the last project that we worked with. I didn't see anybody try to complement the data, the production and supply data sets. So, but that's something that needs to be done, right? So let's say we already have, we want to know bookings. We have a table that registers booking details. Well, we want to, it's not complete on its own, right? We want to know the rest of, I want to know details about the facilities and the members. So there's such a thing as joins in SQL, right? So where you join two tables to another, right? So I will just share one of the resources I think that we can use is, yes, we can use Postgres tutorial. So I'm going to drop this in the Slack channel. This is a very good resource to use. Allows you to see what SQL commands you need to use for learning how to query your data, yes, filtering your data as well. So sometimes like what we did, I'll compare this to Pandas, right? What we did in Pandas where we tried to say, oh, we want only data with movies that are written, that are in English language. So if you have your database and you want to pull, you have your API data and you want to pull only the movies that were in English language, right? We can use the where filter. So you want to specify more than one command, you use the and, or these are some of the commands that we use. So this is a very good site, a very, very good site to learn. And then if you do not want to, okay, this is where, so here is another good site for practicing. So you have from the basics to joins, to modifying data, to aggregates, to date string, recursive, all of that. This is a very, very good site. I would really recommend. So your knowledge as a data analyst is not complete without SQL. So this is where it's very important that you go through some of this. All right, so I will drop this in the Slack channel. And if you have any questions, guys, do let me know. Do we have questions?
Yes, ma'am. I have a question.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, so for the project, ma, the Coca-Cola part, I was trying to from 2000 and the tables, I don't know how we're supposed to, or what we're supposed to pull from the what's it called, from the instruction. We're told to pull data from 2009 to 2019. So I think the tables on this thing started from 2011. So I was not able to really see any table except for like PDF documents. I don't know if I'm supposed to just like have to pull those PDF documents first, then now have to use the financial information inside the PDF, or I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if you can
So
dive
I'll
out.
take.
Thank you, ma.
Yes, I understand. I understand your question. So let's go to the Have I stopped sharing my screen? Can you still
Yes,
see my
ma'am.
screen, guys?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay. So I need to share it so that I can quickly explain the assignment. Hmm. So this is taking some time to load, but I guess I will just share. I'll share screenshots of what you're supposed to do in the Slack channel alongside the links to what I have dropped. So, but do we have? Yes, I'll do that. So I'll do that like right after the class. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, how can we get API keys?
For what website? Is it for the movies or for any website at all?
For any website, actually.
Okay, for any website, you register. There'll be documentation, so there would be um they'll basically tell you to register for an API key if they have API keys. So if you need to pay, you would see where to put your credit card. Otherwise, if it's free, you will also get it. They'll instantly give it to you when you register, basically. So it's always there on the website. Okay. All right, so it's past my time, so I will end the class here for today. I'll drop the notebook for the API in the channel as well, and as well as the descriptions to the project. All right, thank you guys. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank